Okay. Okay, the recording started now. I apologize for this little technical problem. I would like to remind everybody that the recording will be uploaded on YouTube, and if you do not want to have your cameras on, it will be okay. Okay, the same question, this time with I would like to turn to Patrick now because I have a similar question related to China. Now, China and Iran also have been very active in their military relationship with each other. China has helped Iran with parts for their ballistic missiles, and also they have, you know, done military drills with each other. But what happened is that again, we see China, trying to be more diplomatic rather than militarily involved. And so, how does China view this partnership? What do you think are the reasons why it has been very cautious?
Well, I guess it's important to see the China behaviors not through the lens of Westerner that we are used to. China never promised to fight Iran, and there are the BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but they are not NATO style. Uh, China mostly do partnership, be it commercial, diplomatic, even with Iran, which has a 25 years now strategic partnership. They won't go to war for another country. It's not like the US when you got an alliance and it promises a lot of things. China has a really long view, in the future. So uh, he won't be taken in some war or others if he cannot know what was going on after that. I remember that China never went to war recently. I mean, therefore, he want to keep that military ability kind of secret because you have to keep in mind that what's matter is Taiwan. Whatever you're thinking about, Taiwan is the objective. Then the rest is just some possibility to go ahead, partnership, business, whatever you want. And there is support, but it's always discreet. Like deniability, possibility, like, yeah, we will sell you motors. You can use it for, ventilators or for drones, but it's not written military stuff. That's the way China is supporting Iran.
I would come back to the topic of Taiwan because it's a very interesting one. So we will definitely come back for that. I would like to go to Omri now because there is also Hezbollah, which has been a key partner in Iran in the region. So before the war started, the recent war, the Institute of the Study of War predicted different outcomes of what Hezbollah would do if a war broke out. One of these predictions was that Hezbollah would conduct symbolic attacks against Israeli forces. The reason why they said it was because Hezbollah had previously conducted such attacks targeting uninhabited areas, mostly because they did not want to provoke a large Israeli response. So I would like to ask you, in your opinion, are these attacks that Hezbollah have done since in support of Iran considered symbolic attacks, or they were just made done to, actually conduct harm to the Israelis?
Thank you, Macy, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. So it's a good question because it's not out of context, and the context would be the clashes between Israel and Hezbollah in what is called the war between the wars. So during those times where there is an actual fight in between Israel and Hezbollah, the two sides still exchanged clashes and stuff like that, but it was more on the symbolic level, to put it in one way. So, for example, the Israelis would notify Hezbollah, look, we know that you have a position near the border. We're going to attack that position. They would clear their personnel from there, and Israel would attack the position. And to an extent, vice versa. So there is an element of symbolicism in the attacks between the two sides, but not so much in the context of the war. So if we have a spectrum of between symbolic attacks with that don't really aim to cause much damage and all in zero-sum game, a scenario when Hezbollah just launches everything that it has, it's somewhere towards the symbolic, but it is not symbolic as a symbolic act. These attacks did do mean to cause harm, and they target both military infrastructures and military personnel. Many soldiers have died. They attack civilian cities without any discrimination. They just launch the missiles, and they also attack strategic infrastructure, such as the ammonia tanks in the Haifa port, which, had they been hit and exploded, would have been a major disaster. So the bottom line is that the Hezbollah attacks do aim to cause harm, but it's not an all-in zero-sum sort of operational strategy. They do play the long game. Patrick earlier referred to China as playing the long game. Hezbollah plays the long game just as much and just as well. So between the worst case scenario of having 1,500,000 missiles launched per day by Hezbollah and Israeli cities, and the reality where there are just a few days of 100 missiles per day, which is still a lot, but it's not 1,500, then these are not symbolic attacks by any means, but they are not all in, and they are not zero-sum game from Hezbollah's point of view. To link it back to the Iranian angle, you have to ask yourself, okay, Hezbollah is there from Iran's point of view as a deterring force towards Israel, saying the logic was in Tehran was the logic was Israel will not get into a war with Iran because it will get hit in its backyard from Hezbollah. But Israel hasn't really been hit by Hezbollah as bad as it thought it would be. So, from Iran's point of view, I think we should ask the question, has Hezbollah failed? Has Hezbollah failed both to deter Israel and operationally not being able to launch these massive attacks that Israel feared that it would? And maybe Iran is sort of like stuck with Hezbollah now because it hasn't produced that sort of threat to Israel.
I would like to ask you, Omri, a question. According to a senior Lebanese security source, Iranian commanders have helped Hezbollah rehabilitate and reorganize their military. They have been helping Hezbollah pace this conflict. And also, there have been some experts saying that what Iran has done was basically reorganize Hezbollah as a far more flat system compared to what it was before Hassan Nasrallah's death.
Mhm.
It was described as a mosaic defense, similar to how Hezbollah looked like in the 80s. I would like to know that if Hassan Nasrallah's death affected the relationship between Hezbollah and Iran, and if they basically follow orders or what they carry as their own agenda.
Thank you, Macy. So that's a very good introduction, and that's a very relevant question. So Nasrallah has been dead for more than a year now. He was killed by Israel in late 2024, in September 2024, if I'm not mistaken. And the organization has changed, and it has changed to similar to what you described. It is much less hierarchical now and is much more spread, both due to by design, both by design and due to circumstances. And the two of obviously are connected. Nasrallah, it was a very, very strong. It's an understatement to say he was a very strong leader. He was the strongest leader Hezbollah has ever had. He led the organization for more than 30 years, and really the organization was shaped in the image of Nasrallah. There's a famous saying, on your command, Nasrallah, where all the Hezbollah fighters will do whatever they're commanded with by Nasrallah without questioning anything. And that statement doesn't exist for the current leader on your command, Naim Qasim. It just doesn't exist. Um, the thing about Nasrallah and Iran was that it was not a smooth relationship. If we go back to the 2006 war that Nasrallah initiated, Iran completely rejected that because it exposed Hezbollah to a war with Israel. And even then, Israel understood, okay, Hezbollah is very strong, but um, we can damage it to an extent. And then came the ceasefire, and during those many years, Hezbollah has rearmed itself and has reorganized itself, as it does today during this ceasefire. Um, but I think that your point on pacing the war is very much an Iranian strategy more than maybe an independent Hezbollah strategy. And I think that the most obvious example for that would be the fact that Hezbollah did not infiltrate Israel following October 7. So just yesterday, a an Israeli website published the full letter that the Hamas leadership sent Hassan Nasrallah on October 7 upon the infiltration into Israel. And Hassan Nasrallah, had he wanted to join, would have joined, let's say, on October 8th, okay, and would have literally conquered the Galilee. Um, that would that would have happened, but this is a decision that was not up to Hassan Nasrallah, it was up to Iran. And Iran, I think, stopped that sort of escalation from happening. Um, Nowadays, the organization has changed, has morphed. Its leader isn't as authoritative as Hassan Nasrallah was. And we're probably seeing more Iranian influence on Hezbollah than we did during the Hassan Nasrallah days, where he was such a strong leader and such a charismatic leader that people would follow him, and he gained all that power, which doesn't exist with Naim Qasim these days.
Thank you so much for this very good explanation, Omri. So far, what we've done was to focus on what happened during the war. I would like to now shift our point of view towards futuristic possibilities of the war. So I would like to go back to Giulia. And Giulia, we know that there have been reports that Russia has provided intelligence to Iran in terms of locations and movements of American troops, etc. Um, the reports suggest that most of these intelligence have been imagery from Moscow's satellites. but it's not clear that if any of these Iranian attacks were actually linked to Russia's intelligence. However, there were several drones, Iranian drones, that hit locations where the U.S. troops were. I guess my question is that, well, it's quite complicated how international law works, but according to international law, if a state provides intelligence to a party to a conflict, to the degree that that intelligence is used to win a very strategic battle, it might be considered, the state giving the information might be considered a party to the conflict. So, what are Russia's consideration in this regard? Um, would how like what would be the consequences if Russia were to be involved in this conflict?
Mhm. Yes, the news you referred to was launched first by CNN and was also relaunched by TASS and other agencies in Russia. But I have to point out that some agencies are philo-governmental, so they reflect more what the government wants us to believe, what the government is telling us, and some are semi-independent or independent. In general, I must say that the only regard I have to this is that little to no attention was paid to this piece of news inside of Russia. And only a quick note by Mr. Lavrov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, just faced this matter by saying, and it was reported by TASS, the philo-governmental agency news, saying that it's true that Iran and Russia engage in military trade and they favored each other's engineering and they give themselves information. Of course, he didn't go too much, into the specifics of this giving information to each other, and I don't think we will ever know the specifics of that as of any country. But in general, says, but this is commercial only, and is just for information. It is nothing too military, so it doesn't imply that Russia is intervening or is helping Iranians to target and attack military bases and soldiers. And he also added that, everyone knows where Americans are there. So again, the amount of provocation is it's always there again to relaunch we would say this problem to other people. And I must also say that this piece of news was also delivered to President Trump by Zelensky, as if to say, look, the Russians are in the conflict against you, and the same Zelensky didn't receive much regard in this. So again, whatever will be the outcome of the war, and I don't think that Russia will ever be considered to be part of the conflict. I don't think even the US wants this. Of course, we will see, but so far, given the little attention that this has received, I don't have any evidence, any proof to hypothesize an intervention in the war. And drawing on what we were saying just before, the something related on the relations between China and Iran, I was drawing on this and thinking that the same relation that Russia has with Tehran at the moment is of the same nature, is transactional. So I give you something, you give me something in return. So it's nothing more than a partnership. We cannot say it's an alliance. So as China is doing, also Russia really struggles not to be entangled in this because it's just business. Of course, the extent of this business is linked to something, which in the case of Iran and Russia is not based on shared values, like we would say the NATO organization, but it is more based on the perceptions of the same threats in the regions. There is a whole theory that says that, like alliances are made out of threats given by proximity of powers, their capacities, their offensive intentions. And so for what I can see, this is just an alliance which now is contingent to the risk of an hegemonic outside United States kind of power in the region. And so they are fighting against this, but not in a long-sighted world. And this is also part of multipolarity that Russia is trying to promote all over the years. Yes.
Thank you, Giulia.
Thank you.
Patrick, since we're talking about possible outcomes and reactions, we know that Beijing's massive oil stockpiles had offered a short-term protection, but we know with a long conflict, this could seriously exacerbate the domestic economic pressure on China. We know that China has been receiving a discounted source of energy, especially since 2021 with the 25-year cooperation agreement between China and Iran. And we know that by the end of 2025, China was importing up to 1.4 million barrels per day from Iran. So, I guess my question is now with the Strait of Hormuz being, closed, how far will China go to defend its energy interests? I know you explained that China is not interested in getting involved militarily. But what do you think China's plan would be in this regard? Would it try to find a way to get its hands on energy from Iran, or will it just diversify itself in that regard?
Well, that's always the big question. On the short term, we know that indeed China was better prepared. They got like 220 days of import from the Middle East, at least in 25. Its biggest supplier is Russia, but Russia count only for 17%. So on the long term, there will be certainly a problem. You talk about the energy. Indeed, there is a different way which China is working on, like the diversification. That there is the idea of building a new kind of not a lifeline, but how do you call that? I don't know the word.
Source? No?
Yeah, well, the building another pipeline there with Russia to more and more taking less petrol from the Strait of Hormuz. The problem is that it will give Russia more leverage on China. So there is this energy to reduce the oil dependency. Actually, I guess China's growing electric vehicle fleet has already lowered the demand from 1 million barrel a day, which is huge. The problem is that the energy comes mostly from coal, like 54% now. So it is a problem now. And the biggest problem now, if you take the long term, is not only on oil, because let's say that if you have only electrical vehicle, the oil is used for anything. I mean, your computer is made from oil, your cell phone, so you still need oil. Even if it's not to travel, to build stuff, you need oil. And the problem is that with the other country which have to pay more for oil. That imply that they will have less money to buy everything else. And China is world industry mostly is turned toward selling to other country. So if they cannot sell, at least if people cannot buy what China is producing, that will cause a great problem inside China. And that's the long-term problem. Even more, actually, at the moment, the oil problem has made the price for fishermen boats really high, which means that your food is costing more than before. So if you don't sell product, if your food is costing you more than before, that will be a problem for the CCP, because the CCP rests on bringing, let's say, richness to these people and peace. But there is no peace. So you have to resolve the problem with the Hormuz anyway. But indeed, they won't never go to war for the reason that I told you before.
Yes, absolutely. The reason I asked about the war was because there were again some reports that if this was predicted by conversation. Excuse me. And I'm quoting, reports suggest that China is considering taking steps that would help Iran militarily if a full-blown conflict returns. The reason why I asked this question was because I was reading some predictions, and of course, they're just predictions, and we can't agree that that is going to happen for sure. So the source of these questions came because some experts thought that maybe China is preparing to provide spare parts and missile components, which it has done, but in the
It's still doing it. They won't attack Iran because it's not their ally, but their partner, and they taking like 90% of the oil from Iran to a cheaper price until now, at least. So they need, mostly not really need. It's a really good opportunity to keep Iran the way it is. So Iran should not lost, because if they lose the war, that will have some repercussion, minor repercussion from China, but some repercussion. And once again, it cannot show to the US what they have as military techniques or intels, because they want to keep that for the right moment if needed.
I see. Thank you so much for shedding light on this, Patrick. Giulia, talking about the Strait of Hormuz, we know that Russia has its own advantages when it comes to energy. I would like to know how the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has affected Russia's interests as a global and energy actor.
Yes, in fact, I must say that three advantages have been really emerging since the closing of the strait. One is the resorting to multipolarity, as I was telling you, and the second one is energy being the soft power of Russia. I mean, we already knew this, but this conflict has made it clear again, also to us, to Europeans. And the third, which already, which I've said to you, is regarding Ukraine. But staying on energy for now, we have to remember that Russia is rich in oil and gas, and despite it has rerouted its supplies to China, India, in these last years due to sanctions, the advantage of Russia stays there, and it's there to stay, as Putin confirmed in April this year during a press conference with the journalist. He said this is a time for a new role for Russia. Russia could be the new center of global logistics and of transportation, international transportation routes and infrastructure. And he was talking specifically to his friends, he literally said friends and partners. So whoever wants to join us now, I mean, they are welcome to. This was the message. And we have to say that Russia has continued to export oil and gas in the last years. Between 2014 and 2025, actually, a large amount of oil and gas was absorbed by fast-growing industries and populations like China and India, as we discussed. And now it is surprising because in March this year, the CREA, a Center of Research on Energy and Clean Air, just noted that Russia registered a 52 monthly increase, 52%, sorry, increase on fossil fuel revenues. And the European Union was the largest buyer of pipeline gas and of LNG from Russia. So this is telling us something, that Russia wants to leverage on energy as a means of power, not so soft, if it can influence, of course, the whole world, the food routes and everything we discussed, but also that the EU may be in times of instability, regional instabilities, which very easily turn to be global instabilities, maybe must reconsider the Repower EU plan, which is this very ambitious plan to cut out the Russian oil and gas supplies by the end of, if I'm not mistaken, by November of next year, 2027. So, and Russia is riding the wave, as we see in this time. And yes, so again, it's strategic. It's an advantage. We just have to see how long will it last for.
Thank you. Um, I would like to go back to the region with Omri again. We know that Iran has been supporting Hezbollah. But after the disruption of the Syrian supply route, and then with the war, we know that there has been some kind of disruption in sending out equipment, weapons. So it kind of seems like the that Hezbollah can, at least for now, rely on the weapons through this corridor. So it has started to manufacture its own munitions, of course, on a smaller budget. Especially, I was reading a recent, I would say, article that so Hezbollah is manufacturing drones that cost about only $300 to $400 using 3D printing and with commercially available electronic components. This, I would say, could look like some kind of an independence for Hezbollah or semi-independence. So I guess my question is, um, how would this new independence from Iran look like for Hezbollah in the long run? Would it eventually lead to it being a stronger player in the region or somehow deteriorate its position?
Thank you, Macy. So I'll go back to the end of my last answer and say that Hezbollah, even if it does want to be more independent from Iran these days, it is not. It is not because both the leadership has now changed. Again, Naim Qassem isn't Hassan Nasrallah, and he's not as strong and authoritative. And the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, has literally sent more people to Lebanon to fill in the ranks of Hezbollah, because the Iranians don't trust Hezbollah as much as they did. And I think that the reason is that the level of infiltration by Israeli intelligence into the organization has showed the Iranians that they're dealing with an actor that, as strong as it is, isn't as bulletproof as they would have liked it to be. So I don't think that Hezbollah is any more independent these days than it was. But you mentioned Syria, and that's a very, very important point. Since the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime, and more so in recent months, Hezbollah is struggling to smuggle weapons via Syria, and it doesn't have an overt military presence in Syria anymore. It operates in cells, and it has a covert operation there. It has launched attacks against Israel from Syria, but it is not nearly at the same level as it was before. During the Bashar al-Assad days. So now Shara is in charge. He's having some negotiations with Israel indirect, and Hezbollah don't have Syria as a territory they can operate from. But at the same time, so not at the same time and not, but at the same time, since they don't have that route to receive Iranian weapons, and definitely not via air, because that would be intercepted as well. Hezbollah has gone to more guerrilla warfare and more independent kind of stuff, and doing those FPV drones, attacking with them, and they have caused harm. That is going back to the very, very first questions that we talked about. So in that sense, Hezbollah has taken a few steps back. It doesn't mean that it's going to be any easier for Israel to defeat it, for Lebanon to disarm it. It still has stockpiles of weapons that were there for years, that have been there for years. Just last week, Israel destroyed a tunnel, a Hezbollah tunnel that infiltrated, that went into Israeli territory. These things still exist. So, but again, the organization is very, very much restrained based on Iranian strategy for the long game, playing the long game. And it does operate on a more low-key guerrilla warfare kind of style, but at the high level, it is very, very much at the strategic level, it is very much influenced by Iran. Operationally, if they can hit there and Israeli troops here and there and launch these drones into Israel, then they're happy to do so. But it doesn't symbolize a larger independence from Iran, I would argue.
Okay, yeah, it does make sense why the Israeli government is very focused on the Iranian government, because they believe that it's because of the Iranian government that Hezbollah, can operate as it does. Talking about regional impact, I would like to go to a very extremely important question that I have from Patrick, and that is, the conflict in Iran has had some kind of effect on how China, on the consequences of China for the future of Taiwan, and of course, the South China Sea. Can you shed some light on this topic for us?
Well, it's really interesting because, and I love that those words that were on the Economist, I guess, who say, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. I guess it's from Napoleon's word. And it's exactly what's happening, which kind of surprised for that region, because to wage this war in Iran, the US depleted all the stockpile of his ally in the Pacific regions. So Japan, Korea, and this giving a sense of like a problem for those country, because they don't know how. Well, they know how to rank. They were not happy at all. Uh, at the moment, as we are speaking, even the US are depleted from their own missiles. which means that to replenish everything, at least their stock, I mean, for the US, it will take like 5-6 years only for the US. So imagine when you have to send missiles and other ammunition to the other country. They will have to wait longer unless the US can produce more, which is not possible actually. Therefore, the China is indeed looking at what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz and say, okay, what about the Strait of Taiwan? Because the situation is similar. I don't know if you're aware about Corbett and Mahan. There are two naval theoreticians. Mahan was saying that if you want to win a naval war, you have to have the biggest army to occupy the ocean. And like for the strait, you have to have your military everywhere. Corbett, on the other side, was saying you don't need to have the biggest army. You just have to make it impossible for the enemy to come inside the region. And that's exactly what we are seeing in the Strait of Hormuz. The US have the biggest army in the area. They destroy more or less all the Iranian army. But they're not keeping the strait. The Iranians are still winning, in fact, in this part because both are not coming for fear to be destroyed. So you win at the moment. And China is really looking at that because China is close to Taiwan. The US has to go far from the country. That's like to Guam from the area. So it will take time. So you have all the US allies depleted for ammunition. You have a sense of a new possibility, and that's what China was building until now. Because first, historically, China has a coastal defense. Then it is transforming into blue water defense. So you have, I guess you're aware about the island that China has, let's say, constructed in the South China Sea, which were or small island or even in existing island. So now you have military base over there. In plus, you have what China has learned from the US during this war, which means all its capability. They study weaponry, radar signature, like the F-36, F-22, the super secret aircraft. China has both there, and they capturing all signal that they can. Also the strike pattern, missiles defense performance, electronic warfare signature. So they're learning, they're registering everything they can on military, US military warfare. And they know that the Corbett style is really efficient. What we call it today is the anti-access and area denial. It's A2/AD, if you know the term. So the strategy is to use like long-range system to keep your enemy far from your theater. And in shorter range, you got like drones to restrict the freedom of movement or destroy whatever comings. And also electronic warfare. So China is creating his book for when the times come, if he needs it. Because after that, okay, I'm not sure that the US will come to protect Taiwan if China invade Taiwan, but I'm not sure that China want to take possession of Taiwan, making a war, because there are other problems after that. I mean, you have to destroy everything. And the reason why Taiwan is important for the Western and the US is the TSMC company. And the difference is that for China, Taiwan is important because it's part of China for him. And by the way, TSMC is also important, but it's one thing between several other reasons why China want to invade there. So I will say that at the moment, the US are working for China on that situation.
Okay, thank you so much. That was very interesting. Thank you for taking the time to explain all of these aspects. Now, same topic about their regional consequences, the consequences of regional stability. How is it? How does it look like for Russia, Giulia? Um,
Yes. Well, if we speak of neighbors, Russian neighborhood, we must point out what we refer to because the term is contested, as is the term Eurasia. And I won't bore you with the definition of each term. Let's just go and focus on neighbors. So it's basically those countries, first of all, that share with Russia a common history. So the Russian Empire, the Soviet regime, the fall of the Soviet regime, a common or more common geopolitical spaces. Let's imagine the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea. And they also share a traditional power component, which is usually pivoted and directed to Russia. So the meaning is that the Russian Federation is considered to be the major power center in the region, or we must say it used to be, because for some years now, the Russian neighbors have been engage in multi-vector type of policy, a type of foreign policy that is redirecting some business opportunities, investments, and partnership towards Iran and China. I'm referring specifically to Central Asia. So, in case of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, the New Belt Initiative Road, and also the South Caucasus, so Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia. That being said, when we speak of neighborhood, we have to divide the interest for all the region and the specific interest for the countries inside of the region because sometimes they differ. Speaking of all the regions, so Central Asia and the Caucasus, the closing of the Strait of Hormuz has opened up new opportunities for the middle corridor, which is this logistically very complex international transport route that is able to carry goods from China to Europe, bypassing both Iran and Russia. So imagine the potential of this corridor in such a moment. And basically departing from China, there is a restock in Kazakhstan, then flow into the Caspian Sea, and again, either to Georgia or Azerbaijan, directed to Europe, either to the Black Sea or Turkey. So this is telling us that a new opportunity is there for the corridor to be more important now that that Russia is not a feasible option for us, and Iran is not either there as an option. And basically, I would say after this background that the main advantage the region has gained from this war so far is route diversification. It's not a coincidence that the leaders of Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan have met some weeks ago, I think it was in April this year, to institutionalize the corridor and to show investors that we are here and we are safer than other routes now. That being said, this will open up also maybe for a major role in the region of Georgia. That is also part of the corridor, but the port there is not able to let big tankers and big cargoes in due to the capacity of water. So new investments will probably come to Georgia to build a new port within this corridor. It is the Anaklia port. And as I said, where we have a big opportunity for the region, we also have to focus on single states. And we mustn't forget about Armenia, which now is even more interesting than ever because new elections are coming in June. Armenia, yes, it's part of the Caucasus, but it's excluded from the corridor. It is landlocked, it is a tiny country, and it has good relations with Iran from a trade point of view. I read from different sources that around 20% of Armenian goods flow through the port of Bandar Abbas. And so any obstruction to Iranian routes could have a consequence on the economy of the country. I just want to conclude by saying that in this case, in case of these wars where countries are bordering and everything is concentrated in just a region, one problem that we don't hear much about is refugees. And a massive intake of refugees from Iran would be disastrous for Armenia because it comes from years and years of refugees, starting from 2020, the Second Karabakh War, so the first Nagorno-Karabakhis, then 2022, the relocants from Russia that relocated to the neighbors, Russian neighbors, because they were cheaper and bringing their socioeconomic impacts for the local population, and 2023, the last offensive by Azerbaijan, which caused the last forced evacuation of Karabakhis to Armenia. So again, opportunities amidst chaos and opportunities amidst, maybe we must say, problems on the agenda of the single neighbor of Russia that needs to be tackled if we don't want to create maybe some trickle down effect on the local population as well. I would say this, yeah.
Thank you so much, Giulia. That was truly, truly interesting to mention the different countries here. Talking about consequences, talking about the effects of this war. I want to go back to Omri, and I want to ask him the big question of how is the state of Hezbollah after the war? And I mean successes, failures, anything that has become and has affected whatever the consequences of this war is for Hezbollah.
Thank you, Macy. So it is a big question. So I'll keep it at a more at a high level, but also being conscious of time. From a strategic point of view, Hezbollah still alive, still fighting. That's its major success. Terror organizations don't just fold and disappear. It doesn't work like that. Hezbollah is a very, very, very strong terror organization, arguably the strongest terror organization these days. Um, let's say that even in the scenario that it is being disarmed or disbanded or whatever by the Lebanese state, which is highly unlikely in itself, even then, Hezbollah would still have its fractions and its fighting power and ideology. It will not disappear. So Hezbollah is strong enough for us to know that it will stay with us and that it's a major success. Operationally, they're not doing as well as they would have liked. The fact that Israel infiltrated their ranks for intelligence and for targeted assassination, such as Nasrallah's, shows that it has its issues, operational issues. It has also lost a lot of land in southern Lebanon, where Israel established what it calls a security zone. So it's up to 10 kilometers into Lebanon. Now you would think, okay, that's a major failure by Hezbollah, but also it's an opportunity for them to legitimize their existence because they would be the one who would fight the Israeli forces there, not the Lebanese army, not anyone else. So that conquest legitimizes Hezbollah's existence and keeping their arms with them. Obviously, a major failure to lose Nasrallah, but at the same time, Nasrallah also he didn't establish the organization. Nasrallah replaced formerly the Musawi, who was also assassinated. So you never really know what you're gonna get with the next leader. And maybe now the bigger dependence on Iran will actually create a very different but not any less weaker enemy for Israel, for the West, for the region as a whole, as a destabilizing and peace spoiler party. So we don't know how things are going to shape, but we've got the successes that can be spinned and that can be sort of like highlighted, and then we've got the failures that can also be spinned and that can be used for opportunities for Hezbollah, as I'm sure they will use them for opportunities. And really, what has changed? So this is a really, really important question. What has changed after all of this? What has really changed in the region? At a high level, not that much. On a tactical level, yes, this actor has changed and this actor is dead and this actor isn't, and so on and so forth. But at a high level, time will tell. But where we're sitting right now, not that much.
Thank you so much. That was a nice conclusion to the previous talks. I want to continue with the last question. Patrick, this question was given to me by one of our very highly educated colleagues. So I'm going to read the question. This is regarding the talks between US and China. So, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that China will use its influence on Iran to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz from behind the scenes. He also added that it's very much in Beijing's interests to get the strait reopened. We know that oil prices have put pressure on China, but could a prolonged US entanglement in another Middle Eastern war serve Beijing's long-term strategic interests, especially as China has spent years reducing its dependence on oil?
Well, I guess it's both a crisis and an opportunity. As we saw it, China is already the best in green energy. And it posed a problem for Europe that in part want to be less reliant to oil and go on green energy. But they are really, hesitating to buy it from China. But if you want to do it now, the best is go to China. If you want to build your own device, well, it will take longer. We already saw that it is maybe not so hard than for the other country, but it is a crisis for China. The Hong Kong fishermen are stuck in the port because gas is too high for them. But at the same time, on the long term, as we already said, it's an opportunity for what's going on in South China, military speaking. But in the diplomatic way, it's also an opportunity because China looks today as the responsible power, the adult in the room in confront of Trump. You have country turning toward China because, okay, China is not an angel, that's for sure, but they know how China reacts usually. And that makes this country a more reliable partner for business. At the same time, already said that is gathering all military information from the US. US is draining away all the resources from the Indo-Pacific. So there is a card for China to play to keep that image of responsible country. Also, which is kind of funny, is that they made less how do you say that? They send less airplane into the Taiwan area to be seen like, okay, we're calming down the game, not to attract, the people or what we're doing there, so that they keep the game calm there, and just to appear more respectful, in fact. And it's working. Actually, a lot of countries are turning toward China for business. You have Canada. Canada was the best friend of the US at the time, and now is turning toward China due to Trump's administration behavior. So I guess China is winning on the long term on military information, on diplomatics play. but he cannot keep that situation for too long, as it will cost him a lot on the economic part.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Patrick, for all of your inputs on the topic. This was indeed a very enriching discussion that we had here, and I'm very grateful for all of you being here and spending time here in this webinar. We have concluded with today's webinar, and we're now open to any questions directed at the speakers. In the meantime, I would like to first thank Carlotta, the head of engagement of ITSS Verona, without whom we would have not been able to organize this meeting. She was a very important person for today to organize everything. And also thanks and shout out to ITSS Verona for always giving us a platform to exchange our opinions and learn from each other. Michele, Sonia, thank you very much for all of your efforts. I would like to remind everybody one more time that we are trying to keep a respectful approach towards each other's opinions. Even if we disagree, it's a chance to exchange our point of view. So we would appreciate that attitude in the questions. Um, okay, let's check if we have any questions. Okay, it's it's a good sign sometimes, and it's either a very good sign that we don't have questions or a scary one. I would like to interpret that as a good
Uh,
one. See,
Sorry, Macy, there are a few there is a question in the chat, and I will also add one. So some people are actually typing. You can have a look.
okay, we're gonna wait a bit to get those questions. Okay. Sophie has asked, thank you. Oh, okay. It's please, Sophie.
Mhm.
Okay, Omri, this is a question for you. Could Omri touch on the Houthis? They have been okay, I lost the question. Uncharacteristically uninvolved so far. Do you think they are planning a move?
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. It's a very, very good question because where are the Houthis in all of this? So they launched one or two ballistic missiles and several drones towards Israel, but they haven't really played a role in all of this. And this is, of course, by design. It's not that they fell asleep and that they don't care anymore, but that sort of strategy of restraint that we see from Iran onwards, I think plays a role in the Houthis' level of involvement. Um, so right now, all eyes on the Hormuz Strait, but once the Houthis get involved, all eyes will be on the Bab el-Mandab in the Red Sea. And there's no reason to block both at the same time. So they can block the Hormuz Strait today, and the US can claim that they've opened it, and then tomorrow they'll block the Red Sea. So it's another card that the Iranians or the axis of resistance can play. The Houthis have been hit pretty badly by both the US and Israel, also the UK, but they still exist. I mean, they're still operational and they still rule the most important strategic points in Yemen. Um, so I think that the Houthis are a card that is being uh, held to play at a later stage.
Thank you so much. We have a question for Patrick. I have a question for Patrick. You mentioned corvettes before. Has the Hormuz blockade reinforced China's concerns about its own Malacca dilemma? What lessons is China learning? Perhaps the need to search for even more alternative routes?
Well, indeed, it works both way. If you blocked Malacca, indeed, China won't have its energy come to help him. But in the other part, if you block Malacca, you won't have China merchandise for Europe coming. So you will have both problem. But for China, has seen this problem, it's working on it. There are different alternative routes. You have the for only gas. There are China-Myanmar pipeline, which already bypass Malacca, carrying oil from, I guess, Bay of Bengal into Yunnan province. Then you have the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor with the Gwadar port, designed also to bypass Malacca. And there is the Russia-China Port of Siberia pipeline that I talked before. Then for the merchandise, with the climatic problem that we have, China can pass also by the North Pole to sell his equipment or his merchandise. So there are different possibility, and you can also just bypass the Malacca Strait. It takes just more time. So the Corbett work in both way. As I said, there are possibility. The fact of blocking a strait, as you don't have any way to go, is that you delaying the problem, or you try to suffocate someone as a country. I mean. But there are ways, as I said.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have another question that is directed as at everybody in this panel. So, can Iran evolve from a sanctional region power into the strategic bridge linking Russia's continental ambitions, China's energy security and BRI objectives, and South Asia's trade corridors? Or will competing interests among these powers turn Iran into a geopolitical battleground instead of a connection? Anyone is welcome to respond to this question from their point of view.
Yeah, I can start. So Iran can remain sanctioned and still serve these interests and have economic relations with Russia and China. Neither Russia or China care about U.S. sanctions or whatnot. Um, the thing is that I don't think Iran, as a very, very proud country and civilization, will sort of like dwarf itself to serve others' interests. There will be more of a give and take relations, if anything, and Iran will gain from that sort of role that it can play, but it doesn't necessarily have to be desanctioned or anything like that in order to play that role. It has commercial relations with both Russia and China, um, so it doesn't have to really change anything about it, but rather just to revive itself after the war, or mend itself after the war, more than anything else.
I guess one of the big problem to normalize Iran's situation is the will for the US to annihilate any nuclear idea of Iran. Unless they work on it, they will still have a problem to normalize everything Iran could want. Even if they found kind of new nuclear weapon by the Strait of Hormuz, we will have also some repercussion, because we are talking about Strait of Malacca. If I'm not wrong, I guess it's Indonesia or Malaysia. We talk about why not putting also a tariff there. for passage, but it was pushed away. But the idea is working more or less. Why you praying in Panama, in the Red Sea, and not in Hormuz or in Malacca? That's a question.
Indeed, my contribution in that regard is that for Russia's point of view, I don't think that Iran is going to play such a key role. As I said, the relations between Iran and Russia are transactional, short-termed. I mean, we will see, of course. But what I wanted to say is basically that if we touch the point of a nuclear weapon, yes, Russia sometimes is allegedly blamed to help Iranians on this, but actually things are very controversial as far as we know, neither Russia wants like a nuclear power nearby in control of its sphere of influence, because if we look at the map, Iran is there, right close to its neighbors, which we know that Russia has been losing some control on for some years now, Central Asia, multi-vectoring, and the South Caucasus, and so on. And Russia has already continued, even without Iran, to visit. I mean, the president, no, sorry, Mr. Lavrov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has already gone to Qatar, to the Emirates, to establish kind of good relations with Russia, even with Iran being under attack. So I think that this is not like a key role to play now for Iran. It is more something to control.
And if I can add, there is a plan for all the Arabic country in the region to have its own nuclear power plant. But the idea, which was created by the US, is to buy I was going to say kryptonite, but it's not kryptonite. The material necessary. Yeah.
Uranium.
Yeah, thank you, uranium. For those central should be built somewhere in the middle of all those countries. And there was a proposition for Iran, but obviously, if you have a nuclear central at home, you want to be able to replenish it when needed and not be suspended to the will of someone else. So Iran refused. But that could be an idea to, level all the demand of the diverse countries.
Thank you so much, Aslan, for your contribution, and also Sophie. We have Giulia who has raised her hand. Giulia, please.
Thank you very much, Maisie. First of all, thank you to everybody for the fantastic, sorry, I'm in a double device, so I'm gonna cut one. Okay.
Yes. We can hear you well, though. So, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So then I'm carry on.
Okay.
This war is touching not just in the region, it's actually touching many circuits, both geopolitical and economic. Because if, for example, has raised the price of the commodity oil, while at the same time generating lack and generating revenue to actors that are not directly involved in the region or in the war, let's say. So, but this is exerting pressure not only in United States decisions, but also in China decisions. China has a crescent, rising influence in many regions. He has money invested in South America, in the Shanghai port. He just closed a deal with Canada to provide electric cars. At the same time, the Belt and Road Initiative. And it's long-term rising challenge to USA in terms of hegemonic influence. So how could this war and all the different circuits being activated by it create pressure on China? What geopolitical surprises could China has along the way that China itself is not foreseeing? Because the region, the conflict is not regional. At this point, it's universal and it's moving few tides that are raising all the boats or posing threats to all the boats. So it's for me a big question, how could this unfold? Thank you.
Patrick, would you take this question, or anybody who would like to take
So
it?
if I understood well, the question is how the new generated price, in fact, will affect China. Is that the question?
Yes. Well, how could all these multiple vectors lead China into which decisions, which geopolitical surprises could come along the way?
Well, we can say it already happened. I was saying before that indeed that will impact China, as if you have to pay more for the gas, you will buy less device or stuff. I think China can find new way to lower the price. It has the ability, and also it can work on its own market. He's trying to do that for since a while now, as it is promised the internal market. He got several problem with credit related to construction. There was a big failure that caused a lot of trouble in the country. We are, you said the BRI, which allows him to sell everything China is doing, and apart augmenting those lines, that may be a problem. I'm not in the CCP, so I cannot answer directly, but I can imagine that if you cannot sell to the same people as before because they buy less, you find other customers, and you try to sell lesser price, which he can do. We know that in the China, the price has, even without the Hormuz, people are being paid more than before. The richness has augmented. So what they did, they just get to Vietnam and other country, build factories, and start selling from there, which allow you to not be under sanction because it's another country which is selling the stuff, and also lowering your cost. And you have to remember that China is also selling things that we need, be it on pure material construction like rare earth material, or just computer. You have Trumps who came some days ago with all the president of like Tesla. I don't know if Microsoft was there. Well, everybody was there to do business. So they need China. And a little history there. Remember, in the 19th century, what was happening? Westerners were buying stuff in China. China was buying nothing because Europe, or at the time was Europe mostly, got nothing to sell to China. And we have the same problem, let's say, today. China has built it itself again, is selling everything to the world. And he got what the world needs, even to build devices like missiles, like your car, just talking about rare earth material. So we are in the same position, but the difference now that China can protect itself and not be invaded, and they don't want to be imposed. If you're bargaining with China, you have to remember history, because China didn't forget what happened, and use that as the century of, I know the word in French, but I don't remember in English. Well, it will come later. Anyway, it remember that situation and don't want to start it again. So now they can impose, in fact, they will. And that's what we've seen with what happened a few days ago. Trump went there, nothing special happened, unless nothing officially happens. Really important. I guess I responded a little bit to your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Giulia, for your contribution. It was very interesting to have that question as a I think I can call it a wrap. Um, Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Again, thank you to our experts for dedicating their time to share their insight on the matters that we discussed today. If everybody agrees, we could officially call this the end of today's meeting. Thank you, Sonia, for commenting, and that's it. Thank you all. Have a lovely, beautiful, amazing Saturday and weekend. I hope you get to relax. I hope you get to enjoy. And I hope you get to regain your energy for the new coming week. And that's
Amazing.
all.
Thank
Thank you
you.
as well. Most
Thank you,
important,
Macy.
thank you for directing this also.
So
Yes,
see
indeed.
you next time.